So we recently saw a fairly big new update from Red Barrels to the Outlast Trials. To coincide with spooky season at Signala in the form of program Geister, we also got a brand new game mode called Invasion. Oh no!
Stamina for oh god!
It's me.
Oh god!
As with most updates, we got another lore drop too, which means quite a few fresh documents to find and dive into. In the previous update, we got Deep Burn, and some documents do refer to what happened in that update and are part of the same set. My video on Deep Burn is only about 9 minutes long, so go and check that one out first if you haven't already. For those of you who are caught up, strap in and let's unpack some Outlast lore. Please be aware there will be spoilers for Outlast in this video, but with that being said, let's begin. In this update, we got one additional document in the Beloved set, and this one is a news clipping from 1959, the previous year in-game, which describes the death of a Frenchman by the name of Jacques Tréguier. According to the article, Tréguier inherited a large sum of money and used this fortune to create a very profitable shipping empire ever since the end of World War II. However, this notorious playboy had vanished from the public eye in recent years as he was, according to people close to him, exploring his spiritual side. Then Jacques turned up dead by his own hand, apparently, with reports of him having been mutilated almost beyond recognition, and this points to the potential prime asset we saw in the previous update, Deep Burn. One of those documents mentioned a subject, a female who had been involved in the siege of Leningrad and may have resorted to cannibalism as a result of starvation due to the military blockade by the Axis powers. It mentioned this woman having an acolyte or an investor, and that this person was mutilated. Given that he was exploring his spiritual side and had a lot of money, Jacques is likely the acolyte and investor that they were talking about. This potential prime is part of a collaboration between Mount Massive Hospital and Signala. It's been cool to have a little bit more about this mysterious individual drip-fed to us. Interestingly, one of the newspapers we can get in the Communal Rebirth details a second of the Tréguiers turning up dead, again mutilated and being found in a Catholic church, sans legs, and this man Arnaud, Jacques' son, was in line to inherit the Tréguier fortune. It's considered that he was killed by the reagents, as his death and the setting was remarkably similar to the one carried out by the reagents in the trial Cleanse the Orphans. This is another storyline that we'll have to keep a close eye on. As in Beloved, we also got one additional document for the Trust set too. For context, the first of these documents saw Easterman journaling about the reagents, and he thinks that the reagents are still dreaming about Amelia Collier, that they are scheming like mice in the walls. He thinks that they don't trust him, and that they think they can trust each other. Well, he planned to change that. In the new document, another diary entry by Easterman, we see him writing about when his uncle gave him a Swiss Army knife for his 9th birthday. This uncle, thanks to this gift, became Easterman's favourite uncle. From that day on, he trusted Uncle Hans implicitly. Easterman would see a knife as something you can kill with and something you can die with. And of course, his uncle giving a 9-year-old a knife was completely irresponsible. So, Easterman wants to do the same thing with his reagents, his children. He speaks about a knife being a perfect totem object and then goes on another bizarre tangent, talking about something called penisnide, one of Sigmund Freud's theories. Penisnide essentially translates as penis envy, and Freud thought it as something that women go through before reaching sexual maturity, that they, don't have one. Easterman talks about penis envy in men, and calls the penis a life-destroying monument, claiming that every sentient being alive in the world wants to take vengeance on the world for the phallus that they were denied. Finally, he gets to the point and compares the phallus to a knife. He says that he needs to give the reagents knives, and then says that he cannot. This is clearly a play by Easterman in order to break down the trust between reagents, and to get them to trust him instead. And finally, as we saw in the previous update, changes were made to the insertion gates that presented a potential new issue when it came to security at Signala, but we are yet to see the knock-on effect of this program in giving reagents weapons. Now onto the main, meaty part of this video, and that is covering the 6 new documents which are a part of the new Invasion Conception set. But first, a refresher. Quite a while ago now, we got some documents leaked into the trials regarding the XPOP classification. One of the XPOP archetypes were called imposters, and according to the file on them, they are also known as tricksters. The reason for their involvement in trials is central to the development of reagents, that reagents must learn that nothing and no one is to be trusted, as imposters would mimic the reagents in the trial. That method of conditioning clearly did not have the desired effect, in large part due to Amelia's shenanigans. Easterman needs that control back now that Amelia is out of the picture, for now at least. But anyway, the new documents. On the 29th of June 1960, Alice Avellanos and Easterman are meeting, and Easterman asks Alice if she ever visits Amelia, to which she responds a resounding no. She states that she's looking forwards and not backwards, as this is science. Easterman says that Amelia lingers, and Alice tells him to just let her die. Previously, we spoke about how reagents had been making a fair bit of noise when carrying out their tasks, and they were setting fire to things. This is heat, pun intended, that the agency did not need. And as Avellanos says, the CIA are indeed annoyed. They want things to change, and fast. Bear in mind that this meeting took place before the Deep Burn program was even approved. Anyway, Avellanos says that Murkoff will need to make a gesture to the CIA, and they want to get together a budget for the operations that will take place in 1961, which is next year in-game, before the election. In the in-game universe, the US is set to have a presidential election on the 8th of November 1960. The Democratic candidate being John Fitzgerald Kennedy, and the Republican candidate being Richard Nixon. Easterman suggests a program based around fire, and thus the Deep Burn trial program was established and approved by the Murkoff board as a deterrent in order to stop these reagents committing arson. Easterman, however, recognizes that the problem goes much deeper. He suggests putting a knife in the hands of reagents, and naturally, Avellanos is opposed to the idea of arming the reagents inside the facility. Easterman gets going on the totemic flexibility of phallic ideation, and Avellanos takes that as her cue to leave. Around a week later, Easterman is speaking with a man named Olivier Baranchik. He's a highly trusted member of Murkoff and director of behavioural medicine at Mount Massive Hospital. And he's also the man who approached, and kind of forced, Easterman to work at Signala for this program. Baranchik is telling Easterman that the board have concerns, not the first time Easterman has been confronted with this reality, and he offers to speak to the board himself. Baranchik denies this request without directly telling him no. For context, the Murkoff board is a very secretive group, and we do not know who any of the board members actually are. Anyway, Baranchik states that the board reviewed the proposal for Project Invasion, and the board's concerns come from the recent patient transfers from Mount Massive, along with the fact that Signala has only just recovered from a security collapse, with lots of reagents still at large, out there, somewhere. Easterman argues that they turned that situation into an opportunity for learning, which is why Baranchik is now very confused as to why Easterman thinks that giving weapons to reagents is a good idea. He argues, as we heard from him before, that this is all about trust. A phallic totem, of course, and Baranchik is perplexed. Avellanos is also there in the meeting and tells Baranchik that the agency have directly requested to train the reagents in the use of knives. That the request for this came from someone inside the agency called Bissell. Richard Bissell Jr., at this point in the timeline, is the CIA's deputy director for plans and was heavily involved in the plot to kill Fidel Castro and the failed Bay of Pigs invasion of Castro's Cuba, which is due to come soon in the Outlast Trials timeline. Could it be possible that the agency are still training reagents up to assassinate Castro? We already know that attempts to do so previously failed, as seen in the Cuba ending. Has Richard Bissell Jr. requested the training of knives in trials, or has Avellanos lied to Baranchik about Bissell requesting this directly? This could be to cover Murkoff's ass if something was to go wrong. But moving on. She refers to November, and she is of course talking about the aforementioned election. She also mentions the term in clover, which describes enjoying a period of ease and luxury. She's talking about how, if the election goes the way they want it to, then they'll be reaping the added funding from the agency. Easterman starts speaking about how the reagents will not be themselves per se, that they'll be wearing masks, a framed persona who wields the knife, that this way the reagents won't even be able to trust themselves, and that they'll only trust him. That when the reagents are released, they'll have Easterman inside them, forever. However, the reaction of Baranchik is one that he seems to distance himself from Easterman's comments, and instead asks Avellanos if he can see the budgets. Towards the end of July, on the 27th, Easterman is speaking with Scarfiotti. Scarfiotti is asking Easterman why these reagents, who have been working together to survive for months and years in fact, would suddenly be willing to kill one another. He talks about the mask being a totem of ego death, that they'll do it because they trust him. Scarfiotti asks a valid question and asks what'll happen if an armed reagent attempts to kill a prime asset or one of the X-Pops, to which he responds that they will give the reagent a mild correction. He tells them that these reagents have been killing each other from day one. The Snitch, Bootleg Jesus, the Union Boss, these were all reagents that had been repurposed for use in the trials, and Easterman is convinced that they'll kill for him. About 2 weeks later, a memo is sent out to security requesting that additional security personnel are required in order to escort imposter reagents into and out of the insertion gates. When they're taken out of them, the reagents are to be induced into a twilight state by sedatives and hypnotic suggestion, therefore removing the need for violent handling. Although there are no restrictions to this violence, any masks, costumes, and weapons are to be removed from reagents immediately. In my opinion, this is just another security breach and accident waiting to happen. Weapons will, no doubt, make their way into the sleep rooms. And finally, in regard to this program overlapping Project Geister, the nature of program invasion means that reagents may experience changes in emotional response to the Skinnerman. Any of this brainwave activity takes place, and it's to be marked for Dr. Easterman's special attention. But that's it for the lore update for Program Invasion and Geister 3.0. Some good stuff in here, and some potential hints as to what we may see in the coming months as Signala. If you enjoyed this little lore update, then please leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you aren't already. Go and check out my Outlast Trials playlist, where I've covered every single update to the Outlast Trials since launch, and comment your thoughts down below. But for now, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.